So, thank you for giving me an opportunity to be a part of your conference of this webinar. The topic of my presentation is means of upbringing within parental responsibility under the Czech law, and I will be focusing mostly on corporal punishments and their legality or illegality according to the Czech law. First part of my presentation will be focusing on presenting the Czech legal regulation of means of upbringing, and the second part of the presentation will be focused more de lege ferenda. I will be looking whether or not. Before getting into the first part, I should firstly determine the definition of the term corporal punishment that I will be using in my presentation. I believe every one of us can imagine certain things under the term corporal or physical punishment. However, to keep my presentation consistent, I will be using the definition that by the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child in 2006. This definition is very wide and understands the corporal punishment as any punishment in which physical force is used and intended to cause some degree of pain or discomfort, however light it may be. Now I will move to the first part of my presentation. Parental responsibility presents a set of rights and duties that exist within the relationship of parents and children. For example, for itself or to upbring it. Parents should always exercise these rights and duties in accordance with the best interest of the child. In order to be able to do so, they are also entitled with the right to direct the child's behavior. Oh, I'm sorry to interrupt it. This didn't work as I planned, so I'm sorry, I'm back where I stopped. Parents have also the right to direct their child's behavior. Okay, is everything okay? My presentation was not working, so I switched back to the original version.
No problem.
And
we can see.
So parents can. Okay, thank you. As I was saying, parents can use a right to direct their children's behavior in order to secure child's safety, its health, and as well as rights of third persons, public order, and morals. Parents can do so via using methods or means of upbringing. We can therefore see that means of upbringing are a set of tools that parents can use in order to exercise parental responsibility well. The child is also obliged to conform to those methods if they are appropriate. There are two main sections regarding two means of upbringing. You can see them in the presentation. The first one I was just talking about, it sets down the legal limits and it sets down the right to direct child's behavior, whereas the second section, section 884 of the Civil Code, presents limitations of the possible methods of upbringing that parents can use. You can see that none of those provisions contain a certain list of methods that parents can use. There are also only certain limits that all possible measures should be kept in. All of the methods should be therefore used only in the form that is appropriate to the circumstances, to the child's age, to its development, and none of these methods can threaten its health, its development, nor affect its dignity. What can we imagine under the term means of upbringing then? We can definitely not reduce this term only to physical punishment. There are two main groups of means of upbringing. The first one, which should be prioritized, are positive measures such as praise or rewards. The other group are negative measures. However, even amongst negative measures, physical punishment should be only the last one parents can go to. They should always prioritize other negative measures such as reprimands or restrictions. The Czech legal order also contains mechanisms to cope with inappropriate methods of upbringing, both in order to protect the child as well as punish the parent who used inappropriate methods. There are three main consequences. The first ones are civil law consequences. They directly affect parental responsibility. If there is a parent who abuses or seriously neglects his parental responsibility, the court can relieve him of his parental responsibility. If inappropriate methods are used, it can also establish administrative law consequences in the form of misdemeanor, for which the parent can be sued with fine up to 50,000 Czech crowns. And last but not least, for the most serious cases of inappropriate methods of upbringing or even of violence committed against children, there are criminal law consequences in the form of criminal offenses such as child abuse or grievous or actual bodily harm. So far, we can get an impression that corporal punishment may be seen somewhat acceptable under the Czech law if it is kept within certain limits. However, this is not quite a right interpretation of the Czech law. We have to read the provisions of means of upbringing always within the light of other provisions of the Civil Code, especially of the provisions from the general part of the Civil Code and from the part on personality rights of an individual. The most important provision here is Section 91 of the Civil Code, which says that an individual is inviolable. If we consider an adult individual to be inviolable and we protect him, his personality rights, and we cannot legally, physically punish him, all the more so we cannot do the same thing to children who are also individuals and who are usually deemed to be the weaker party, and we usually protect them even more than adults. Therefore, we shall make a partial conclusion that corporal punishments should not occur under the Czech law and they are not tolerated, even though we do not prohibit them explicitly. However, we shall not forget that there is a certain trend amongst not only European countries in prohibiting corporal punishment explicitly within the legislation. In the presentation, you can see a map of Europe. The orange one countries are the ones who have an explicit ban of corporal punishment. The dark blue ones are the countries that do not have such a ban. And the green countries are the ones that do not have an explicit ban of corporal punishment, but are committed to introduce it in the future. We can therefore ask ourselves a question if the Czech legislation is sufficient and if it should not change and follow the European trend. We should also keep in mind that there are important international documents regarding to the rights of children, which also ask states to protect children in all possible forms. The most important international document when it comes to rights of children is, of course, Convention on the Rights of the Child. Its Article 19 asks all state parties to protect children from all possible forms of violence, and in this case, violence is being understood very broadly. And corporal punishment, as I have defined it in the beginning, definitely falls into its scope. Apart from legally binding documents, there are also non-legally binding soft law documents, which are also important, and we should also keep them in mind. For example, there are the principles on parental responsibilities that were created by the Commission of European Family Law, based on parental responsibility legal regulations of all EU member states, and that could be therefore considered somewhat a common legal framework. These principles also explicitly prohibit corporal punishment of children. And last but not least, there is another reason for the Czech Republic to at least consider introducing an explicit ban of corporal punishment. In 2015, there was a decision of the Committee of Social Rights in the case Approach versus Czech Republic. In this case, an organization called Approach was not satisfied with Czech legislation and especially with the missing ban of corporal punishment, and lodged a complaint with Czech Republic. It stated that Czech Republic allegedly violated Article 17 of the European Social Charter. The Czech government, in its statement, didn't agree with that complaint. The Czech government tried to explain the Czech legislation in the same way that I have just done, and it also pointed out that Czech Republic could not violate Article 17 because even though Czech Republic is and was party to the European Social Charter, it was party only to the original version of it from 1961, not to the revised version from 1996. And those two versions of the European Social Charter differ in the Article 17, whereas the revised version contains prohibition of violence on children. The original version of this article does not contain it. However, the committee did not agree with the Czech arguments and decided that Czech Republic has violated Article 17 of the European Social Charter. Even though the decision of this commission is not legally binding, we should for sure not take it just flippantly, and we should keep it in mind and perhaps think about changing our legislation. On the other hand, it is also good to try to find arguments for the second view, for not changing the legislation and keeping the current one. The main reason here is that our current legislation can be seen as sufficient. If we interpret it correctly, we can see that corporal punishment has no place under the Czech legislation, and we should not tolerate it nor promote it. There are also functional mechanisms within the Czech law to combat serious cases of inappropriate means of upbringing, as well as domestic violence on children. A huge part in this also plays the case law, and especially the criminal case law of the Supreme Court of the Czech Republic, which often sets down guidelines to determine what behavior can be seen as appropriate and what behavior is not appropriate. For example, you can see one of its decisions in the presentation, and in this decision, the Supreme Court stated that not every strict punishment of children can be automatically seen as child abuse. It should be always considered each and every case individually with regarding to what methods were used, under what circumstances, what were the consequences for the children if it had and if it suffered any injuries or physical pain or physical discomfort. And only based on this we can decide whether or not particular behavior can be called child abuse or not. There's also a slight issue with the Czech Republic and especially with its society. There still is, unfortunately, quite wide acceptance of the lightest form of corporal punishment, especially of this so-called educational occasional slap. You have a diagram in the presentation. If you look at it, you can see that there was a survey in 2018 on physical punishment of children. Respondents were asked many questions. One of them was if they use or have used or would use in the future physical punishment as a mean of upbringing their children. In total, 63% of respondents said they would use it under certain circumstances. We can all agree that this number is very high and we should definitely reduce it down. However, I don't think the best way to do it is through introducing an explicit ban of corporal punishment. It should be rather done from the bottom by educating people and promoting using positive parenting more over corporal punishment. However, this opinion of mine is just my view of these things. I don't want to present it as the only correct one. And on the contrary, I would be very happy to hear your opinions on this topic and perhaps to share some of experiences from your countries. And that is all from me for now. And again, I thank you for your attention. Thank you for allowing me to be here today with you. And I'm sorry for this technical complications that happened to me. Thank you.